morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. It is 9:01 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, and Commissioner Emily Klaus. Commissioner Edwards has just joined us via Zoom. County Manager Leonard Hernandez, Assistant County Managers Robin Campbell and Rob Gilder here for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We have several items to take up this morning. Probably take a break about halfway through, short break, but we're here for 3 hours to cover several things. The first up is Courthouse Complex Renovation Update. And if there's nothing to start out with, County Manager, should I turn over to the
Absolutely. Yeah, the team is ready to go.
Rick, can you introduce your team?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Rick Thomas, I am the manager of our capital projects planning team. And each of the team members introduce themselves.
Good morning, Christine Traber. I'm the project manager with the architect team, North.
Tom Termke, Central Services Project Manager.
Jeremy Dunn, executive with Mortensen, who we were selected as the design builder for the project.
Anyone online you want to introduce?
We have Rebecca Kaysen. She's with Miller Hall. She's my backup in case I mess up on the presentation.
All right.
Don't jinx yourself. So I'm going to share a screen so I can walk you through. Bless you. So I'm going to back up a little history just to familiarize yourselves with the project and where we're at and how we're going proceeding through it. Here's the overall campus per Google. So we know we got buildings 1, 2, and 3. Building 4 is where public defense will be, and building 5, if needed, to move the sheriff in temporarily. We also show building 6 there, which will be vacated by the end of this project. We're also showing building 7, where we'll house the contractor during construction, and the parking lot right south of him is where we plan on doing our laydown area for him as he brings in materials. And then we also are going to use the large parking lot we have over here for contractor parking during the project. So you've seen this slide before. It's just a breakdown of each of the building and who the stakeholders are in each building. Again, in building 1, we have PAO, civil and criminal. We also have a pretrial. Building 2, we have the clerk on floor 2, the rest of Superior Court services. In building 3, district court. Building 4, we have public defense and the hub. And building 5, again, if we need it for the sheriff. That's, as you know, ongoing. Here's just a blow-up of the plan right now. In building 1, first floor, we have pretrial services down here in the blue. Back up, this is a proposed security entrance here in the gray. We have PAO civil, and this is a large conference room. And during the construction, this will remain open because this is where Superior Court uses their jury orientation. And until we can get jury orientation established in building 3, we'll continue to operate this room here. The second floor of building 1 is all PAO, a criminal. Moving on to building 2, level 1. So the red area there is where jury orientation assembly will be. And then the large courtroom stays the same, the small courtroom stays the same, and then we're building a new courtroom over on the right-hand side of the plan. A little bit that's changed on this plan is before we had the addition butting up against the building, but for code reasons, we had to move it off plus or minus 12 feet for fire separation. So that's why it looks a little different than the last time I showed you, but pretty much the functions are still the same for the offices. Going into the second floor, the olive color is all the clerk's area. And then our Superior Court has the remainder of the building. We're building renovating the second floor courtroom on the right-hand side. And if I zoom in a little bit, as we talked before, the reason we're doing that is we're modifying this elevator so that we can bring detainees up and directly into the courtroom on the second floor as well as on the first floor. Looks like you have a question, Commissioner.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Building 2, level 1, the last slide.
Okay, let me go back.
The right side is now where you say new standard courtroom,
Yes.
and there was a bunch of offices there. Where are those people now? The people that were where that is?
Okay, let me zoom in a little bit.
So that was part of the Superior Court admin functions, and they have been repositioned elsewhere in the plan. And part of the addition is allowing us to do a shuffle of personnel in that building.
And some of them are also going on the jury orientation up there in the red. There's 3 desk space up there in the, right above there in the red. And then the remainder of them will be dispersed in the addition or other spaces on the floor.
And then, before you move off from
Okay.
building 2, you've got the Olive, the clerk,
Yes.
and I know the clerk had some requests about secure evidence vault or whatever. Is that, where is that?
So let me go back one slide. So because the vault is constructed like a vault, it's concrete, it'll remain in place, so they'll still have access to it in the Olive on the first floor. And
And then we're also building that exhibit room.
And then there's also a temporary exhibit room on the second floor, right there in the middle, that large area, so that they can, like if there's a court set in session, they have to take the evidence out, they can take it to that room without going all the way back down to the vault. So it's a temporary storage area, secure area. And then there's more permanent in the concrete vault that remains.
Anything?
I will keep my comments to myself for time being.
Okay.
Righty. And moving on to Building 3, District Court. This is where the team may have to help me a little bit. We're building a new courtroom up on the upper right-hand area. We're also updating the courtroom on the lower right-hand corner. Moving the functions of the district court to the old sheriff's area up in this area. We also have the mental health court over here in the light tan area. Probation will be down there in the orangish color to the bottom. What else am I missing? I think that's it. So we vetted this with district court and we're able to accommodate all their requests as best as possible on the one floor.
Is that, I know that there is, or at least was, some functions like in the old jail area. Is that,
That's the
are we still
probation.
using
in the-
that, or is that coming out of there? And
It's coming out and coming up to this
incorporated
floor.
into this,
That's the
okay.
probation in the orangish color there. So that all their services will be on the same floor. Pardon me?
At the request of the court.
Yes, yes.
They've asked to have everyone on this
Yeah,
line.
that's fine. Thank you.
And Building 4, zooming in on level 1, the green is the resource hub. And the remainder in blue is for public defense, as well as on the second floor, all of public defense.
And just as a note for the resource hub, their space is double or more than what the present have.
Excellent.
We've also had a conversation with Patrick about how much space he'll need and when, should the new courtroom,
Caseload standards.
yeah, the caseload standards, thank you, go into effect. And what he has told us is this will get him through the next 2 years,
2
right?
to 3 years, yes.
That's not full.
Just making sure that he's got space.
As well as the potential.
With the new FTEs, the way we understand the caseload standards today. It's also knowing that eventually we'll need to accommodate more, but it gives us a little time to figure that out.
Assuming the state funds our
Assuming
acquisition
the
of all
state
those
funds
FTEs.
it, that's correct.
I didn't include building 5, there's just minor renovations to a walk-up window for the sheriff. You know, there's many things going on, so we have it available, ready to do. If need be the sheriff or if the other things work out, he doesn't move there, we're putting that plan as well.
Building 5 is where,
PAO is currently,
And
and
elections.
and what?
Elections is currently in
Yes.
building 5.
Family support
That's the old,
there's a family support function in part of that building too, first floor.
You can see that on the.
building 6 is public defenders kind of.
Right, that we're gonna vacate.
That's good. Quick question, and that is sort of, where is the word facing or customer facing piece for the clerk? I'm looking
For the clerk, you
District
go back.
Court or Superior, are you talking Superior Court?
The clerk,
Yep.
you go up the stairs where PAO is currently there, there's their face,
Building
customer
2,
service
level 2?
facing.
Oh, public hour, gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, those-
So it'll be same as where the prosecutor has theirs now?
correct. A little different, but same area. Because I think currently right now that's a conference room there, but we've taken that away for a more public area.
Can you talk a little bit about your process of getting stakeholder input and where folks are at with the space design? Practice, all the departments, give a little background on that.
So we initially met with the stakeholders with a kickoff meeting, getting all their wants and needs. Christine and her team processed all that. We went back with the presentation and said, here's what we think we've captured all your wants and needs. Help us refine it a little bit. We refined it, went back again with them, made sure it was okay. And we still have a little bit of work on the courtrooms themselves. We've met a couple times on that because an office space is an office space, but the courtroom's a little more high function, so we want to make sure we get that right. It's going to be very similar to what they have courtroom-wise because the space is just limited, and we've vetted that with the stakeholders a couple times on that as well.
Have they seen this plan currently?
Yes,
Okay, and was there any concerns with how things are laid out? Are they happy with what you've captured from their input session?
they're happy as they can be with
Gotcha,
what
I
we-
understand.
the limit, they understand the limitations of the project. They're as happy as they can be, I believe. When I get to the next slide, that'll be a little more.
And that's why I want to do this before we get to the next slide.
Okay, yeah, so we've had buy-in on all of the current plans and where everybody's going. The next slide, I'll explain a little more is where that's at.
And you're now sending, is it weekly or bi-weekly email updates to the?
First of the month updates
Okay.
to all the stakeholders.
Explain what the email will entail.
So right now, it's a general email that you've been receiving first of the month. Hopefully you've been receiving, I'm sending to you all and your aides as well as all the stakeholders. Just telling us where we are, what we've accomplished so far. It's very high level at this point until we get into the project and say, we're gonna start on day 1. This is where we're gonna be. We're gonna get more detailed stakeholder information to them. When we get to buildings 2 and 3, it's gonna be a very interactive communications because we're going to have to relocate, well, not necessarily relocate people, but we'll be working in the building, tell them this section's ready, now we're going to be moving over. So, you know, we'll give them a 2-month look ahead, a 1-month look ahead, a 2-week look ahead, and tell them where we're at in the process and how it's impacting their function. Because in our discussions with the stakeholders, say we have to operate, we can't stop. We have to function as courts, we have to function as clerks, we have to function as PAO. So that's why building 1 and 4 unoccupied, so we can start with those buildings, get them up and everybody moved. And then when we move into buildings 2 and 3, in the addition, it'll be night work because my big fear is that we make too much noise for a court and invalidate their process. So we've just discussed as a team and night work is what's scheduled so that we don't impact their ongoing business operations.
Yeah, I appreciate your commitment to communication. And like you said, once you start getting into the nitty-gritty of the construction project, keeping all the stakeholders up to speed, and it sounds like it may be a daily interaction of coordinating their operations and making sure the courts can function in every one of the buildings. So thank you so much for taking the initiative.
And when the project kicks off, I'll be going I do my rounds. I'm not a doctor, but my rounds are I go talk to the stakeholders and they'll tell me if something's not working, what's happening, so that I can relate to the construction team. And we can correct any deficiencies that we have in the process that we're not impacting them.
Thank you for taking a personal approach.
Because typically, we don't clean up something, we leave a piece of tool in the middle of a courtroom. Something's gonna happen, but we wanna make sure that when they're up and ready to go at 8 in the morning, that we're ready to go and they can do their work.
Perfect. Thank you. Good job.
Let me ask you one other thing. Is the sheriff gonna be, residing at that finished courthouse? Or is the sheriff gonna be at the off-site campus?
Said he was just gonna have like a little kiosk
The
there.
sheriff will have a presence.
Yeah, something to do with
Yes,
state law, but to what
meet the
extent, I
law.
guess, is,
But the majority of his offices, should the board move forward with the purchase of a building, the sheriff will be in the building.
has there ever been a question or a determination of, I know, auxiliary or offices for all the functions are available elsewhere, but has that question ever come up, whether or not it can be just a tiny, tiny slice, 1% of his operation or anything, where state law says the sheriff needs to be at the courthouse in the county
State
seat?
has tested that theory.
Who did?
The state of
Oh,
Washington.
okay.
But I don't know that a county has. We'd need to talk to the attorneys.
I think it's just worth asking the question, I guess, as we move.
Because my discussion with them, as I asked that question, they said, an officer, as Commissioner Fournier said, a kiosk meets that requirement.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if it truly does or not. I mean, they think it does. I guess somebody ought to ask the question, is all.
Understood. So we presented to the stakeholders 2 security screening options. The one you have in front on the screen now is option A. Presented to them, where you see the dark red, that is the more secure fencing type. Where you see the dotted dash lines, that's a more open fencing proposed. We met the stakeholders and overwhelmingly, they didn't like this not presentation, but option. Because people are passing in the secured corridors. No one's allowed in the gray area where it says enclosed courtyard, enclosed courtyard. You have 2 fences of separation, so items can't be passed through. But logistically, they weren't in favor of that. So we'll skip on to option B, which is a secured entrance at each building. It's very similar to what they have now for buildings 2 and 3, and proposed security zone in building 1.
Not have a centralized, like, screening area? Have
Correct.
Individuals?
That is what they prefer.
Overwhelmingly, the stakeholders said, Plan B is what we want. Part of it's managing the security aspect of it and crossing paths of the different clientele.
So, no change, essentially, to what it is now.
Well, it adds
adds a
secure
whole other
entrance to building 1.
Gotcha.
So the conversation that I've had with the team as they've worked with the stakeholders is that we cannot guarantee that the board will include additional security staff.
What's the additional staff that's needed? Have we-
So in both plans, in this plan, they'd like 2 additional ones in building 1 to be able to man the screening operations. 'Cause right now what they do is one manage the x-ray machine, the other one manage the metal detector. It also allows them, if something is going on in the building, they could dispatch one of their personnel to whatever's going on. One can still man the security screen. Also, if it escalates, they can go to one person at each of the buildings and pull them to wherever the incident is.
I guess my question is, what do we have today and what would that configuration,
Today, we have
how many would that increase?
Today, we have 2 at building 2 and 2 at building 3, and a roving supervisor, which is at Chandler Court when that's in session.
So I would add 2 more positions?
So what they would like, this would add 2, but they also want to replace the supervisor with a roving person. let him supervise, so that would be three. Neither,
Chandler Court is a temporary position. It's not a permanent position. It's a ARPA position.
That's a security contract. It's not they're not county employees, right?
there are county
They are
employees, my
county
understanding.
employees.
County employees.
Yes, they are.
So
And,
Robin, have you been able to cost that out, what the three positions would equate to?
no, not yet.
Okay, let's do
That
that
is an
off.
exercise and also the equipment that is needed for that.
Okay, let's do that offline so we can bring the commissioners back like a full cost for this option, so they have a context by which they're making that decision.
I imagine it's several $100,000, I would
Well,
think.
more than that, the reason for it is if you're gonna have coverage, the
Yeah,
whole
you got two
thing,
positions, you probably need four.
people anyway, maybe five. And so then you multiply that per year times how much, you know, how long is it gonna be available versus what would it take to do the alternative, you know, which would try to consolidate those checkpoints or.
But even if we go back to the single point, we have two screening machines in the secured area, which would take 4 employees. And then they're talking about still having a roving one in buildings 2 and 3, because they'd be too far removed, so that.
Yes, but this design already deviated from the original concept
Yes,
to put a small security building there to consolidate security, minimize the operating cost, and secure the entire area. The stakeholders did not like that plan for various reasons, so it evolved to this plan, which was not favorable.
Devolved to this
Now
plan.
it's, yes, devolved, and now it's on to a secure area. But again, the message that has been sent to the stakeholders is we will not guarantee that the board would add positions. So we're at a bit of a standstill.
So if positions were not added, I would have to believe that option A is preferable to option B.
If I can interject.
Yes.
We did speak with the security supervisor, Rick Steffen, at length about this, and he said he would need actually, in addition to Chandler's Cove, 1 additional FTE in either of these schemes. So whether it's the centralized security or whether it's option B with the individual screening, both of these scenarios would require another FTE for security personnel.
Commissioner Mejia.
And if I might also note, we did take a real serious look at the central point screening. I'll just say that the major failure of that is there's literally no way that you can build a fence high enough without making it look like a maximum security prison for them to be able to throw something over the fence into an area that then is open for anybody to pick up a weapon. So that's why we had to really take a look at some of these other options. As much as we would like to have had that single point, there was just no possible way of keeping weapons out of the secure area if somebody really wanted to get it in.
All right, Commissioner Mejia.
I guess I'll be frank and honest. Every time we see the updated ones, I get more frustrated. And it's not because of the work that you are doing. I know that you are being responsive to the stakeholders, but I'm seeing so many wants here. And kind of when we did the Atrium project, this wasn't about the wants, it was about the needs. And I'm seeing that the needs are going to the back burner almost, and then there's all these wants that are being added on to all of these projects. I mean, positions that have already been denied twice are added on there for space. This is to a point like ridiculous. And I know that you are really trying to be responsive to what the stakeholders are telling you and trying to follow that direction. So this is not you, but I am frustrated with the stakeholders because we are overextending ourselves with this project, and this is all about, it's become of like wants, right? And I know that some of those wants may seem like needs, but they're not. And I just, I'm very frustrated, and it's just, and the fact that now, you know, we're hearing that more staff is going to be needed, it just adds this whole another layer of complexity. That, you know, I really think that the board needs to have a conversation about this.
Commissioner Fournier?
The centralized screening area, I don't understand why we, like, I don't know, if it's going back and forth and the preferred option was initially some type of, centralized building, I don't know, like, why we can't just go back to that. And why, I mean, there's no possibility of building, some type of, like, centralized security area within that enclosed courtyard and then shooting people out different directions from there?
We pursued that as our first option
Yeah.
many months ago. Part of it has to do with the impact of, when you start touching soil, then you have to do your environmentals, your stormwater impacts it. Is one, the cost of it to build a central building, standalone building was quite extensive.
Let's talk, if I can interrupt, let's just give some context to that about the constraint you're working in. You explained that to me a couple weeks back, and I think it's important for the context. How much changes you can actually make before it triggers having to retrofit the entire building and what that does to cost. Can you speak a little bit to that?
So the whole building overall, if we exceed 50% construction, I think we mentioned last time, is it'll trigger all sorts of energy codes, seismic codes, other codes. So internally on the buildings, we've done a delicate dance of only renovating as much as we can just to enter that 50%. Site improvements, I don't have the exact numbers, but I want to say once you exceed 5,000 square feet of interrupting the soil, then it triggers all sorts of stormwater modifications. That's why we're very strategic on, like, the building addition and ADA requirements to stay under that. Once you put a 1,000 square foot building out there, and also you have utilities in the middle of that, trees in the middle of that, the cost of building just a simple structure in the middle of the courtyard is not cost effective at this point. That's why we deviated to the plans you have now. And I think Miller Hall probably provided us 7 different options of plans, and they researched in. And the beauty of this is, as they planned and researched it, they gave it to Jeremy's team to cost it out and say, is it gonna cost out within this project? And this is how we arrived at putting it inside the building. Saves cost because the footprint's already there. And as far as, like, putting the central, like Rick said, it's hard to put a fence high enough for deter from a weapon being thrown over the fence or passed through the
Drones
fence.
anymore. There's no fence that's gonna
Keep out drones.
keep.
And it looks like, a caged, at the zoo. I mean, just controlled enclosure. That's not a good civic presence. I don't think we want to portray that to our stakeholders
Building
or our
looks
constituents.
trash. It looks like old trash anyways. What's some bad fences? I think the building's, honestly, I think it's an ugly building, and I don't think that, I'm not worried about making it much uglier. I'm utilitarian when it comes to ugly buildings.
Is there a configuration, if we were to go offline and take a look at some of the potential goals, not increasing our operational costs, not adding positions, holding into tension the fact that we understand there's only so much new construction or changes we can make before we trigger? Do you think that there's some options we could bring back that take some of those constraints into consideration, that get us to where some of these competing priorities need to be? Aesthetics aside, I understand what you're saying about the aesthetics, but let's put that maybe secondary to the conversation. First, look at operational increases and trying to get economies of scale and efficiencies in the building. What are your thoughts?
Operational, I can address it, but their needs and wants operationally, because they're telling us what they have right now they need more people. If we don't change anything at all, they want additional. So no matter which variation we go, it's just a variation of the same thing we have. So I don't think operationally,
What about if we look at the operational, needing more people could be a secondary conversation. Could you come up with a configuration that uses the same amount of people today, understanding your other issues that you're trying to work on, other limitations?
I would say if we want to have secure entry for all three buildings, there literally is no way that we could do that. The option, I will say there's one option that's not on the table right now that we haven't vetted all the way through yet, just because we have not talked to stakeholders all the way across the board. But that is whether or not building one, where the PAO's office is gonna be, does that literally have to be a security screened building as the courts? Or can it be something where there is a kiosk, for example, that could be in that building, and if people were to come and visit, they could call to where they're going and someone would come down and escort them. That doesn't get the person who's a non-government person through a security screening, but it becomes an escort.
That's what they have in Building 5, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's possible, and I don't mean to cut you off, I apologize, it's possible to sit down and look at several different options, that then, and I understand that we're gonna wanna sit with the stakeholders, but the operational increases, if we create a configuration that requires 3 new positions, a whole bunch of it, that may be what is preferred, going to Commissioner Mejia's comments about, that's a preference. And maybe some see it as a need, but then we have to work from the ideal to the real, and how do we balance those together? And I would like Rick to finish, excuse me. But is that something you think we can accomplish offline and sit down and brainstorm around?
The answer to that is yes, but we'll go again back to what Tom said. When I say we, our project team's not the one in control of how the security team wants to operate. And so we've had conversations and tried, working with the group to minimize that, or to make sure everybody understands the design so that they can put a plan together to operate.
So we would need to bring them to the table too, to have a larger brainstorming conversation, to figure out how do we work with what we have, understanding that there's real fiscal constraints that then have operational impacts. Okay.
And that has been the
Yes.
direction and what the team has been working toward.
Maybe the county manager's office can help step into that conversation, and we can convene some conversations around what options to present to the commissioners that have full costing implications, so that you understand, if we go this way, that's the cost. If we go that way, that's the cost.
I don't think this has to get that complicated, frankly. I mean, if you keep the exact same number of security with option A, it's a slightly different situation. Rather than having 2 people at the front of every building with one person's ability to cut free and go deal with something in a courtroom, you now have 2 people for all the buildings dealing with that, and 2 additional people that could be roaming free wherever they need to go. Now, that means there'd be one building at any given time where they aren't at, but given what the calendars are and what the sensitive items are, those people could be deployed and free to move around. And I think, in my opinion, that would be a better scenario, because they're not tied to a central security point at the front. Now, that, I think, to the court, and the presiding judge is here and he's listening, and he and I have discussed this. I think from the court's perspective, that feels like a slight backtracking, because there's always be one building where there's somebody isn't there at the front or roaming through. But if you think of I just have to respectfully disagree. And if you look at the totality of that setup, to me, it's arguably better, not appreciably worse, and even, and it maintains the same. It doesn't, I'm not looking to decrease, I'm not looking to cut court security through this scenario, although when we were doing our initial plan, we were thinking that might be possible. I've backtracked from that, and I'm just trying to keep things static and make sure that security is addressed at an adequate, like, you know, making it better or not making it worse. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's different than what it is now, but like I say, I think if you, and we would probably need to discuss this with stakeholders, you know, but I guess I'm just trying to say that these things have been talked through and bandied about, and I don't want to kind of go back to ground zero with all of it. You know, I think there's a couple of obvious options that we just have to make, we're gonna have to make a tough decision on which is the right one. But I don't see that we can go to a situation where we're increasing security staffing, FTE wise. We just don't have the resources to do that. And I don't think that these scenarios, there's a scenario on the table that would not require that. And that's where I feel we really have to land.
And I agree with you, Commissioner, not going back to ground zero, but picking up the conversation of what you just outlined.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to torpedo what you were just suggesting, but I just want to share my thoughts because I don't want to go back any further than absolutely necessary.
Perfect.
So, you know, so that we can move forward. Commissioner Fournier.
Has there been any thought given to using the other entrance to building one as the main entrance and then just walling off that courtyard and making it to where it's accessible to people that have already been screened? You know, like if it's that, because it's weird to have go in that one screening room, come in, but you know, like that building one there's a big hallway inside there. Could that be used as the central, you know, receiving area and then?
Isolated the same way. And we've studied everything. We brought in a security consultant to work through this in a bunch of scenarios. I think that the other problem that came up with the centralized screening that we heard from both the judges and the staff and security consultant hinted at it when we were doing our review. There are a lot of adversarial relationships going on in the courtrooms. And if you force all those people in through one very tight point to any one of the buildings, you're going to have increased conflict. So when you have victims walking in with the families of a person who's been accused, that's a problem.
That's already
But
happening
that
now.
doesn't change, none of that changes with
it
this.
does
because
with
we're
the
all in the same
enclosed-
courtrooms.
It does with the enclosed courtyard. Rick Steffen had mentioned that right now they have incendiary relationships happening in an open courtyard. If we restrict this even more, you're putting people through an 8-foot width where there's nowhere for them to run. So we would advise against that enclosed courtyard approach because you're forcing people to have to walk with each other when there's really nowhere to escape. It's actually increasing your security risk.
So why would we enclose the courtyard and not allow people to walk in that area?
Because right now, where the dotted line on the front or any part of the courtyard, you put a more secure fence there or on the perimeter, things could be thrown over
And
the roof.
pass through as well.
Pass through.
Doesn't make sense.
It's an
The
isolation zone.
design and defense.
Maybe we need to.
I will say, I don't know that our group up here, quite honestly, can address your very valid concerns in regards to the staffing and operations. I will say the security team at our, 2 meetings ago did indicate that they were going to do an analysis of how operations would work with each one of these schemes. And they've given us the high level in regards to, both of these are gonna kind of require the same amount and it's gonna be more. But we would not be able to do justice in explaining those details to you. I just can tell you that.
That's a fair comment, Rick. I think to Commissioner Mentzer's point, there's a place where there's some options that could work, and we should look at how do we package those up and get input from the stakeholders, and present their perspectives about why they think things won't work, but ultimately there's fiscal constraints to coming up with a configuration that's gonna cause addition of staff and create those additional costs.
Before we end, I know I was approached, and I know other commissioners were approached by the Energy as Cost Savings, Amalsco. Yeah, and, I know that staff have said that they've reviewed kind of proposals before and that it comes out higher, but my concern is we're spending so much money on this, and I've already laid out my frustration, so I won't go digging back into those, but, the HVAC is like limping along, in our buildings, and we're not addressing, I feel like, the big maintenance things that we really need to address. And one of the things that they said that I was interested in is we're making this huge investment, but we're not addressing the main critical issues. And once that happens, right, then we're gonna have to really kind of undo a lot of the work. If the roof or HVAC, right, we're gonna have to go back in.
We're not even putting a
We're
roof
not-
on
we're not
this.
putting
I mean,
any of
you're-
that out,
We're
right.
building something and not addressing even the most basic things, like
And-
a roof.
And so, you know, I kind of want to see the numbers for that, right? So I'm not sure if staff can reach out to them and kind of have that conversation, because I would like to look at those numbers and see, because I've said it from the very start, I am concerned about not addressing the roof, not addressing our HVAC, not addressing those big things that I know are going to go out any year now. And so I'm not sure if commissioners are interested in looking at those numbers. I know that I am. I would at least like to see them and see if there's a possibility to, especially as we're going through construction now, if there's a possibility we can address other stuff as well during that time, I would be interested in kind of seeing what those numbers are.
So we can bring you the information on that. Were you able to meet with I had forwarded you the contact information.
For the ESCO contractors, I have talked to them, yes.
And what was the outcome of that conversation?
Well, primarily what it's been when we talked to them the other couple of times, and that is that it's always possible to do any upgrades in these buildings. There's always upfront money that's associated with doing the studies. You have to go through an energy audit before you can even get to a project, and so that's cash money up front that the county would have to pay. And then even after we would enter into some sort of an agreement, the county would have to have a source of funding to be able to pay back the capital over time. And typically that's done by savings from whatever energy savings you might get from putting in the new systems. But the risk to that is if you don't actually get the energy savings to be able to pay that loan back, if you will, there has to be another source of funding that the county would pay the contractor for the capital improvements that they've made.
Right, and we've had the PFM has experts in these types of proposals. They have reviewed the information that the county's been given and said that it was not in our best interest moving forward. So it sounds like that's the same outcome.
Yes.
Who's made that determination?
PFM, our bond advisors have a arm or a branch that is expert in this area.
Rick, can you share that? Or Robin, did you have that determination?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Maybe.
can definitely share that with you.
Well, the funding issue, I mean, I know that we don't have really adequate means to completely create the reserve that would be required to do all of the, listed out, because we don't necessarily plan to be those buildings forever or whatnot, but there has to be some source for, building reserve that would cover, a certain level of things, and that's where I think Commissioner Mejia is talking about, and we've been curious just to see what that breakdown would be, like what would what would be the county's capacity to contribute toward this type of a arrangement? Where's the gap? You know, what would the energy savings have to be in order to close that gap? What is that, you know, I mean, just to kind of have a sense that, so that we can, because we're getting people asking about this all the time. And it seemed like state law was changed a couple of years ago to permit exactly this type of a situation that we're in, to try to fix this situation that we're in. So it's hard for us without the, armed with the numbers, to be able to say, well, we can't do it, you know?
We
mean-
will bring you the analysis that has been done. And we can refresh that.
Okay, we're,
I don't want to put a discouraging, maybe last thought on this. But when I did work for the federal government, I was involved in two very, very significant energy performance contracts. And they can be successful, but it takes an extremely high level of understanding of the finances in regards to how the contract is actually set up. It typically will bind you for between 20 and 30 years to pay off that project. And I'll just candidly tell you, it takes a real expertise in regards to even managing that project. Not that it can't be done, but it is a very complex process to go through.
Chair.
yes, sir, sorry.
Actually, Rick and Tom have laid out kind of what some of these major problems that maybe we're not taking into consideration early on, and that is meeting those new requirements. If we go over a certain threshold, then we have to meet other new requirements. And in the end, we're trying to build a modern facility with an antiquated revenue source. And it's just not available to accomplish what everyone would like to have accomplished based on our inadequate revenue source. And I guess I'll just throw this out for the county manager. I mean, everybody else has heard me say this. This is being financed on the back of unincorporated Thurston County. There is another way to do it, but it takes building trust in our community. It's not there right now. So anyway, more to come, I think, on how you can balance this. I don't see that you can come to a solution with the limited resources. And accomplish the mission.
I don't, it's not just about revenue sources, it's an antiquated skeleton that we're trying to like scab modern things onto, and it
Well, there is
doesn't work
there
well.
is suggestion of other plans
And
that
it
don't
doesn't
cost
work
that
well, and
much.
I just, like, every time we have conversations about it, I wonder, like, when is somebody just gonna pull the plug on this whole project? Because, and then you get more, you know, suggestions from all these different siloed off groups that, you know, and then you have to look at the big picture, and all these suggestions just get crammed into this already, and it's not anybody's fault, it's just, you know, this tapestry that we're creating is just, it's just not, it doesn't feel good. And like, I keep wondering, like, oh, at what point do we just say stop and let's try something else? I don't know how, if this is trains too far down the tracks, or, but if it's not gonna work, we need to figure out like what our no-go is.
If I could state, going back to a few of the goals for this project and the reason for the project.
Yeah.
Is to provide adequate space for the different departments that are involved. And so virtually all of the different departments that we have right now that are in space that do not provide adequate space for them. I mean, if you go to the clerk's office, I mean, no exaggeration, they have people that are now working out of what used to be a janitor's broom closet. The court system, population-wise, and, you know, and the county has grown, and there's a real need for courtrooms and for court space. And what we've been able to do with our team is to be able to provide space for their current needs with the potential of expansion for this 7 to 10 year period of time. And I mean, it's not going to get us past that. We know what the projections are for the county going forward in regards to population and what the service needs are for the county government to provide. And so, again, I'm not here on a soapbox to try to convince you one way or the other, but if the project does stop right now, we're going to be in a position where the departments are going to be right back here saying, we don't have enough space right now.
But they're not gonna have enough space. That's my thing, is like, they don't have enough space now. They're not gonna have enough space when this is built. And then it's gonna get us 7 years down the road and we spent $50 million and that just doesn't, like, that gives me heartache.
It might be useful, I appreciate you making that point, Rick, kind of taking us back to kind of why we're embarked on this, but it might be useful to see, I hope that you could do this pretty easily, is just give us a list of the departments involved and what their space increase. Like prosecutor will have 37% more square footage. Clerk's office will have 77% more. Like, that'll give us kind of a grounding of like why we're doing this.
Sure.
And everything else that we're not very happy about won't, you know, I mean, because that's really the foundation of the whole thing, is we had limited financial means to do something that was sorely needed to be done, and to see what we're actually getting that's positive.
Yes.
To undergird
Yeah.
what all these other decisions that we're kind of having to swallow would be, I think, really helpful to us.
Chair, I don't want to open a can of worms, and so this is better conversation offline, but I don't know if we're down a path. Were there any other options viable that were discussed in the beginning before this path? Or-
We don't have time to go over all.
Right, decade of.
This was always called Plan B, because Plan A was to go to the voters for a major property tax increase, and the vote was set for April 2020. The governor pulled the ballot, pulled the election, and then we were told we were facing a 10% budget reduction, and we did not feel we didn't know what COVID was gonna do to our local economy. We had 1,400% spike in unemployment increases there for a couple of months, and so we didn't feel like we could put a tax increase back on the ballot. And so this was the only other option within our financial means, was to lease administrative space and renovate the existing court space to create, and then to add to it to supplement the needs of the court system, using the space in these inadequate buildings. But as Tom said, you know, court space is specialized. We wanted to be able to use the existing court configured space and then add to that, versus trying to take some other building and out of whole cloth, like create courtrooms and court needs and jury, you know, rooms and defendants. So anyway, this was really Plan B. There was no Plan C, and we did explore, could there be a Plan C? There was never any possibility of creating a Plan C. So it was this, or just limping along with what we had, or going back to the voters, putting the property tax measure back on the ballot.
Thanks for the background, I appreciate it.
I know we are running short on time, but there's one other topic or issue that we wanted to bring forward to you, and that is what our next steps would be with this project from I'm going to say moving from design into the construction phase. And Tom, I think you have a slide or wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, the schedule's up here.
Okay, maybe you could walk through that just really quickly, and then we could talk about the GMP. So
quickly, the schedule is a high-level schedule showing that we've already submitted site and civil plans to the city on April 26th. Get that clock moving. The best estimate is that they could take up to 22 weeks to approve the site plan. Once those permits are approved, then we can marry our TI improvement permits with that and begin construction. So this is a conservative schedule showing that we anticipate having permits for both site and building to be able to start construction in September. With that in mind, part of our strategy is that we come back in early June requesting funding for early procurement, steel, hardware, door frames, other items, and to be able to start on buildings 1 and 4. Because if we get the permits early, we want to be able to start earlier, if that's possible. That dollar figure is plus or minus between 7 and 10 million. Contractor's still working with us on it to see what the actual cost is, so that we're ready to go once the permits are ready to go. The TI permits are going in at the end of this month, and I don't know what the time frame is on their review on that, but hopefully they'll all work out, come out at the same time. And then still, at the same time, we still have lagging building 2 in addition, because the new building is taking longer to design. Those drawings will come out mid-July, and they'll go to permitting at that time. At the same time, we're still running the cost so that we can get to GMP, guaranteed maximum price. So sometime in August, we'll be bringing the conclusion of what the dollar value and what the scope is going to be. We're still at the $50 million, as we discussed internally with the contractor. I can give you a GMP right now, it's not gonna cost more than $50 million. What we get for that $50 million is what's been on the table discussing it. So that's just the high level right now. The direct cost is running at about 26.8 million, indirect cost 12.8, and owner cost 10.4 for our $50 million. And each time we present something construction-wise, design-wise, we're vetting it back and forth, doing internal estimates. The contractors reached out to prospective vendors, giving us a ballpark, rough magnitude estimate of what's going to cost to do the construction. So we're always validating that we can do this project for the $50 million.
What's that third category? Direct, indirect, and what?
Owner cost.
Owner cost, what does that mean?
So sales tax, my salary, the consultant that's helping us with the progressive design build project.
Overhead.
Overhead for internal overhead. FF&E, there's one other one I can't think off the top of my head now. But things that we provide, IT aspect of it. And we always have to carry a project contingency. That was the other one. Project contingency of 5% of the project is state mandated that we keep that until we get to GMP.
And I would also like to note that the numbers that Tom went through can give us the option of doing either the security option A or B. So we have that built into the budget. The way the design has been done at this point as well is we have the flexibility through the permitting process to integrate either one of those. So that's not slowing down our permitting process at all. And again, I'm hoping that it allows us to be able to come back to the board here in a couple of weeks with more information about this on lead item and an allowance dollar-wise for us to actually start the demolition and construction of building 1 and 4.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you about. When do we have to pull the trigger on this? It sounds like we have a little bit of time on the security options.
Yes, they can work in parallel. I mean, quite candidly, we can get our permits. We can actually start into construction. Wouldn't be ideal, but yes, we do have some time in order to work out the final details. Preferably, it would be within a month or two, understanding that the board has their recess coming up here. I doubt we'd be able to resolve everything before that. We would try, if we can do it.
Okay, does that cover what you guys needed to cover?
Yes.
I just want to tell these folks, recognizing our limited resources, I think we really appreciate your efforts at being innovative and trying to come up with solutions with very limited resources. So thank you very much for your work on the project. It isn't your fault. We haven't got it quite right yet.
We do feel we have a real innovative, very professional team looking at everything we can think of.
I mean, we're hitting, we're stuck on a couple of points, but we're spending a lot of time on those points because a lot of other points have been worked out really well. And like, I saw that, this is eyes wide open for me. Like, I didn't expect this to be, those buildings, are not good. And I had eyes wide open about this. I didn't expect this to be smooth. So if anything, I'm pleasantly surprised by all the things you've been able to work through and get smoothed out. And we still have a couple of points to make, but that was always going to be true. So we'll just have to make the best decision we can.
Good magicians.
Yeah, thank you for all the work you've done to get us where we are. I think we're close to having, the best we can with a bad situation.
Can we have another work session sometime soon? For me, I would like to have more conversation about this. I have a lot of hesitations. And
Absolutely.
before we go into construction, I would like to have another conversation.
And it gives me, the gentleman did a great job of working to get with me on my calendar to give me an update, but I think the comments today allow me to go deeper in some areas and work with them, understand that we don't want to go backwards. It's been a lot of work to get us to this point, so we want to look at what are the constraints and, again, present some options. So we'll definitely schedule that.
Anything else before we drop this topic? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. On track for item 2, state of the parks and trail system. Let's see my public works.
Nice to meet you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's make this one more fun.
Parks and Trails, how could it not?
Thank you.
For the record, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director, and I have a team. Shannon, you should be able to slide your chair on up here as well. We have a team because it takes a village to maintain our Parks and Trails system, but with me today is Karen Weiss, who is the Assistant Director for Public Works, Ed Marson, who is our Parks Operations and Maintenance Manager, Mike Lohman, who is the Road Operations Manager, and Shannon Shula, who is a Strategic Planner for the department. Our Parks and Trails work unit is actually housed within the Division of Road Operations. And so Mike is going to cover the first few slides, and then Ed will go into more of the details of the assets that we do have and the work that we're doing to maintain and projects planned and completed for those. And then we will fulfill our obligation of an annual parks impact fee report that we do every year, which is a little bit later on in the presentation.
Just wanted to say sorry, Jennifer, that I will have to excuse myself here shortly because I have to go to a WASAC Board of Directors meeting, but I'll be attending via Zoom. If you see me stand up and leave, it's not because
Had enough? That's it? Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Mike.
All right. Thank you. It's our pleasure to be here this morning to discuss the state of our park and trail system. We have allocated time at the end of the presentation for questions, but if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to stop us and ask those. So today, as we look at our system, we will discuss why we exist, who we are, where we are, and what we do. We'll also explore how we fund our projects and maintenance activities, along with a few challenges and opportunities we face moving forward. To make sure we provide a consistent quality experience, we strive to deliver on our mission and vision daily. Our Parks, Open Space, and Trails Plan is a guiding document that defines our mission and vision. The post plan is intended to be updated every 5 years. Doing so allows us to solicit feedback from the community and provides an opportunity to reaffirm our direction as in alignment with the county's strategic plan. As we strive to meet our mission, we make every effort to provide a diverse range of recreation resources and activities throughout the county and promote the preservation and interpretation of Thurston County's historical and cultural resources, natural areas, and wildlife. Our role is to be the best possible stewards of these properties to enhance the quality of life experienced by every individual who visits one of our facilities. As we work to make our vision a reality, We partner with our residents and visitors to ensure that our parks, trails, and preserves are accessible and responsive to changing needs within our community. We seek to provide respite from urbanization, preserve the environment, foster understanding of our natural, cultural, and historic assets, and provide opportunities for recreation that meet the needs of the community. The focus on preserving open space region-wide continues with strong emphasis on connecting people to the land, water, and each other. Simply stated, our desire is to meet the recreation needs of our residents and tourists alike. Whether meeting with friends and family or exploring and appreciating the outdoors, we ensure adequate facilities exist to conduct these activities safely. So let's take a look at who makes this happen. Our staff is currently comprised of 5 field staff and a manager. As you can imagine, the services our employees provide are in high demand. One of our biggest challenges is managing our properties and meeting our residents' expectations with such a small staff. We continually seek to leverage outside resources to maximize our effectiveness. In doing so, we utilize seasonal employees who supplement our maintenance crews, caretakers who reside at a facility and assist with the day-to-day operation, gatekeepers that are responsible for opening and closing gates of facilities, and community volunteers. So this is where we are. This is our inventory of parklands. In addition to the size of the park and trail system, we must also consider the location of the facilities served. As you can see by this map, our properties are spread throughout the county. We currently oversee 2,578 acres of parkland, and that's comprised within 24 properties. These include natural areas, parks, tidelands, beaches, historic buildings, special use areas, and undeveloped lands. Included in this inventory are 56 miles of trail, picnic areas, day lodges, shelters, playgrounds, and many other amenities. Our system provides a diverse range of recreational opportunities and promotes the preservation and interpretation of our historical and cultural resources, natural areas, and wildlife. As we look at our properties, keep in mind just 4 maintenance specialists and 1 lead worker maintain this vast and varied inventory. These employees do a great job as they work to meet the recreation needs of our residents. And now Ed's going to provide a synopsis of our properties and maintenance activities.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Manager, Assistant County Manager. Here you'll see a summary of our developed and undeveloped park properties, as well as our historic sites throughout the county. These park properties represent 1,753 acres, or approximately 2/3 of the acres that make up our park and trail system. Next, I'll give you a brief snapshot of our 4 largest and most popular parks. Burfoot Park in northeast Thurston County is one of our most visited parks. This 60-acre park offers newly constructed restrooms, a large playground, picnic shelters, nature trails, and beach access to the waters of Budd Inlet. Additionally, Burfoot offers ADA access to beach viewing and an accessible restroom at the bulkhead just north of the beach area. In 2023, volunteers contributed a total of 342 hours by pulling English ivy, weeding garden beds, and planting native trees and plants. Fry Cove Park is an 86-acre park in northwest Thurston County.
The best park in the county.
Best park in the county for Commissioner Menzer.
Those are fighting words.
Fry Cove Park contains 2 miles of nature trails, a restroom, playground, picnic shelters, and beach access to Eld Inlet. In 2023, Fry Cove Park saw a total of 56 volunteer hours. Volunteers again pulled English ivy, weeded garden beds, and planted native plants and trees. Kennydale Park, it's a good park too. Kennydale. Another of our most visited parks is a 40-acre park located on Black Lake in southwest Thurston County. Within the park, there's a popular freshwater swimming area and dock, a newly constructed ADA accessible upper restroom, 2 playgrounds, a rental lodge, and picnic shelters. The new pre-manufactured restroom was constructed in November of 2023 and provides for ADA accessibility as well as an increased maintenance efficiency. Another great park is Chutes Falls Park, located in the far southeast corner of Thurston County, covers 155 acres in total. This minimally developed park offers large natural waterfalls, a recently upgraded viewing deck, and nature trails.
I haven't been there since that deck was installed. That's pretty cool.
It's,
Is that, where exactly is that in there?
So we used to have 2 view decks out there. It was the further to the right, if you will, as far as orientation goes.
I'll have to take a picture. Let's go. It's an amazing park.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
this really enhanced it. Here you'll see an overview of our popular trail system consisting of 4 main trail corridors. This system totals 56.25 miles of trail corridor, with 37.25 of those miles being paved multi-use trails. We'll take a brief look at the trails and the amenities that they have to offer residents of Thurston County. The Chehalis Western Trails are the longest and most heavily used trail. Users have access to over 21 miles of paved, multi-use corridor stretching from the northern Woodard Bay trailhead to the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail to the south. The trail winds through both urban and rural landscapes and offers views of many varieties of natural ecosystems. 2023 saw the completion of the 41st Avenue Trailhead in the South Bay area, which adds a safer location for users to park and access the trail. In 2023, volunteers spent 250 hours planting native trees and removing invasive vegetation along the Chehalis Western. Additionally, cooperative maintenance agreements with the cities of Olympia and Lacey for maintenance at the intersection of the Chehalis Western and Karen Fraser trails provide users with an improved recreational experience. Next, we have the east-west running Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail, which covers 14.75 miles from Yelm through Rainier and into Tenino. Most of this trail traverses forest and agricultural lands, as well as wetlands and creeks. Trail maintenance partnerships between the cities of Yelm, Rainier, and Tenino have allowed for county staff to focus maintenance efforts elsewhere while the cities maintain the trail within city limits. Recently, as part of the Trail Connectivity Program, we completed a sorry about that. We completed a 1/4 mile trail extension to Crowder Road in Tenino and having upcoming project to replace the restroom facility in Rainier. The 1.5 mile Ralph Monroe Trail runs parallel to Evergreen Parkway in northwest Thurston County. Starting at Mud Bay Road, the trail leads north where it meets the Evergreen State College Trail. This mostly wooded trail provides residents with a great opportunity for a run, walk, bike, or hike. The currently undeveloped Gate Belmore Trail corridor travels from Tumwater near Kennydale Park south to the community of Gate in southwest Thurston County. As part of the Trail Connectivity Program, a new exciting project will begin development of this corridor by constructing a central trailhead and approximately 2 miles of multi-use paved trail near the Glacial Heritage Preserve in the Mima area. The next 4 slides will provide an overview of our preserves and natural areas, which includes Glacial Heritage Preserve, our open space and undeveloped park sites, and our historical sites for your reference. Next, we'll talk about our maintenance level of service. Our current maintenance staffing level during the peak growing and park use season consists of 4.5 FTEs and 2 seasonals. When thinking in terms of the park and trail system that we just outlined and their widespread locations across the county, our current staff is only able to provide a minimal level of service. Staff prioritizes janitorial and sanitation duties as well as addressing or mitigating safety concerns above the more aesthetic work of landscape maintenance. This can mean that park lawns and trail corridors are not mowed, leaves and debris on the trail surface may not be removed, and vandalism response is not as quick as we would prefer.
Chair, could I say something? I don't think it'll be too bad. I like to point out, those watching and new members here in the room, that, what do we have for full-time FTEs?
We have 4.5.
For our park system. Do you know what Lacey's got?
More than 4.5.
Well,
35, something
I
like
think they've
that.
got about 38 or something like that. So just to show the difference of what our folks are doing, a very limited resource. So I just point that out. I mean, a lot of people do not understand how understaffed we are in our park system. So thank you. Go ahead. Sorry for this interruption.
No,
It just gives it confidence.
Our staff is small but mighty. They take pride in their work, and they recognize the challenge, and they're up to it. So this creates a backlog of deferred maintenance that continues to grow as we see more use attributed to the growing population. Ideally, we envision 8.5 FTEs and 4 seasonals as the level of staffing that would enable us to provide our preferred maintenance level of service through our park and trail system year-round. This staffing flexibility would allow for the proactive scheduling of maintenance activities and would allow us to begin addressing our backlog of deferred maintenance. As I just mentioned, deferred maintenance is a byproduct of our current staffing levels. These are a few examples of the maintenance work that has been postponed over the years as a result of our limited resources. By prioritizing safety and sanitation for park users, we see the very real deterioration of park benches, fencing, kiosks, and barbecue grills as a few examples. I'll now hand it back to Mike to cover funding sources and budget information.
The first thing I think about when I see things like that is like, we need to make sure that we're not putting in things that require ridiculous maintenance, like a wooden bench that's just gonna sit out and rot, you know, like, and I'm sure that we would not do that now. But like all these things that require maintenance, just like the courthouse building that we just got done talking about, you know, when they're poorly built and they're let to rot, you know, they shouldn't even be on our list of assets to worry about.
Yeah, we do try to target low impact, low maintenance moving forward as a course of business anywhere we can. Of course.
Then the other thought that I had is it's kind of it's like a mixed bag. It's kind of a point of pride, or it should be, is like every one of these groups that come in and talk to us, you know, what was it yesterday? It was district court. They're like, well, we're the lowest, you know, staffed, you know, courts, and then the sheriff's department, we're the lowest staffed. However, you know, like we're understaffed in all these places. However, Thurston County is amazing. It's beautiful. There's low crime rates. We've got nice parks. So, I mean, we should be really proud of what we do with the resources we had, and that's cool. But then also, we're not gonna not do anything moving forward because we're limited. But I mean, I'm constantly impressed with how much we accomplish with the resources we have. So sorry.
Absolutely.
Random thoughts, continue.
No, we have great staff that take pride in that, and they do a wonderful job with the resources we're able to provide.
Yeah, and it's like I shouldn't use the word complain, but like we're always like, we're understaffed. But we should be like telling the rest of the world, man, look at what we're doing. We're being good stewards of public resources. And I don't know, I think it's a great example of doing a good job.
I think that both of those can be true, right?
Absolutely.
We take pride in our work while yet having limited resources.
Yep. And we move forward, but we still know that, you know,
Well, we spend a lot of time, I think it's a strength of Ed's, focusing and encouraging our staff that the work that they are doing, while it may not be where they think it should be and at the level that they think it should be, it's far and above where it is in terms of how it's funded. And so there's that personal job satisfaction, right? And so it spends a lot of time focusing on that as well, on the team.
Yeah, and they should be saying, this isn't good enough, we need to keep moving forward. So you can be like unsatisfied, but still proud of what you have. That's great.
And I think that that's what makes our group special, is that they are able to separate that. They realize that we would love to do more, but our reality is we can do the best we can. And I think that their best is still good on the curve.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk about money.
All right. So our Parks and Trails program has two primary funding categories. First is capital projects. These are typically new construction, expansion, renovation, or replacement projects. The other component is maintenance and operations, which are the day-to-day activities required to keep our facilities in good working order. Within the capital projects funding, each source is to be used in a specific manner. REIT 2 funds are available for public works projects for planning, construction, reconstruction, repair, rehabilitation, or improvement of parks. Park impact fees can be used for improvements benefiting new development addressed by a capital facilities plan. Projects cannot be solely funded by impact fees, nor can these fees be used for maintenance and operations. We'll discuss this in more detail in a few moments as part of the 2023 Park Impact Fee Annual Report. Conservation futures are generated by a property tax levy and available for purchase of open space and future land development rights, and grants which are available periodically based on specific criteria. We strive to be as appealing as possible when applying for grant opportunities. Looking at maintenance and operations, this funding is comprised of the general fund, conservation futures. These are available to maintain properties that were acquired with conservation futures funding. Not all of our parks fall in this category, and funding can't be used for all park M&O costs. Reservation, permit fees, interlocal agreements. While relatively small, this is a revenue that's generated by the Park and Trail program. In 2023, we had 337 shelter and lodge reservations that generated around $25,000. As we build and develop our facilities, we must be prepared for additional maintenance that comes with that growth. With that in mind, we'll look at how we currently spend our M&O budget. The largest expenditures are people. Salaries and benefits encompass over half of our expenditures and includes our full-time maintenance staff, seasonal workers, and support staff such as accounting and administration. These are costs associated with the daily activities of taking care of our facilities. Professional services include items like trail security, caretaker services, miscellaneous repairs, and maintenance activities beyond our staff's capability. Operating costs are the funds necessary to run our facilities and cover things like utilities, portable toilets, tools, and supplies. Indirect costs account for inter-fund charges, including ER&R equipment rental, maintenance, and equipment reserve. So now I'd like to take a minute and mention park impact fees in more detail as we look at the annual report for 2023. Park impact fees are based on the idea that growth should pay for growth. As a growth-related issue, impact fees are authorized in Washington state statutes concerning development under the Growth Management Act. Impact fees generally can fund increased capacity in the form of capital projects. The county adopted park impact fees in 2012 and began collecting them in 2013. Park impact fees can provide a proportionate share of financing for system improvements to serve new development, provided there's a balance between impact fees and other sources of public funds. Park impact fees cannot be used for maintenance and ongoing operation costs. To date, the county's collected over $6.4 million. Over $750,000 was collected in 2023 alone. The total is actually $787,349 that we collected in 2023. Of the impact fees collected, $2.9 million remains available for funding projects. funds spent in 2023 were largely utilized to replace aging restroom facilities at Burfoot and Kennydale Parks. You can see by this graph that we're prioritizing our capital projects and working to maximize the funding we have available. While this is encouraging, we need to also recognize this presents one of our largest challenges.
Mike, before you go on to the next slide, if it's all right, I'd just like to point out, I know we had a audit exit conference this week. One of the items that was specifically looked at this year, based on a citizen request to the state auditors, was our use of park impact fees. There were concerns that it was being used for maintenance and operations. And I just want to point out, kind of like Commissioner Mincer said earlier, when we were having the discussion earlier about focusing on this little bit where all this other thing is going on, we had no issues, there was no concerns. We were audited on our use of park impact fees, and we did not have any issues that were brought to light by the state auditor's office. So we in Public Works are really proud of that. So just wanted to point that out.
Let me follow up on one other thing, being you're talking about GMA and what it will and will not allow, and why we've got 5 people and Lacey's got 35, or whatever it is that was enacted in the early 90s. And the intent was to move the population into the urban core. And so they underfunded counties intentionally so that we could not provide the service that Mike's laying out and talking about here. We have money that we can do some things with, but we can't run the Parks Department with that money. And so that's all intentional by the legislature. It's the same thing that having to do with when they came out with the sales tax division of purchases in incorporated areas. 85% goes to the municipality, 15 to the county, so that doesn't give us a revenue source. The only saving grace that we've had recently is we have our point of delivery sales tax that is helping us. But in reality, just take a look to the north at Pierce County. Before the UGA, they had Parkland, Spanaway, and all that retail outside of the unincorporated areas. They have the money to function and we don't. So it's a state, we're a subset of the state legislature, and that's where we're at today. So if we want to make changes, we're going to have to talk to our legislators. So I just point that out. Mike, you're doing a good job.
Thank you, sir. As we continue on, we'll look at some of our challenges. Funding is a huge one. We generally have funding available to meet our capital needs. The shortfall lies in staffing resources to plan and execute projects, and presents a longer-term issue of how to adequately maintain the facilities that we develop. Another element we must consider is deferred maintenance, which are those activities we choose to delay or postpone. This is generally due to lack of available resources. Those resources can be either staffing or funding, and often they're both. Once we fall behind, additional resources are required to catch up. We face difficult decisions in determining our work priorities, knowing there will be work that must be deferred. In 2023, we estimate our facility saw nearly 1 million visitors. Many of those visitors have expectations that are beyond our level of service. The mere location of our facilities throughout the county creates challenges. Travel from the Tilley campus to a park or trail and travel between parks and trails can easily be in the 45-minute to an hour range for one way. As we expand and enhance our inventory to meet the needs of a growing community, we're committed to maintaining our level of service standard of 3 acres of developed parkland per 1,000 residents, as was established in the post plan. Even though we're faced with these significant challenges, I'm encouraged by our possibilities. We seek to fund activities that get the absolute most from every dollar spent. An example of this would be within the Trail Connectivity Program. This year's signature project, the Gate Belmore Trail at Glacial Heritage, will make us more appealing for grant funding for future development. We actively partner with other agencies in ways that benefit all parties and residents alike. To be the most effective and efficient in the delivery of our services, we continue to develop our asset management program. This will allow us to make data-driven decisions, ensuring we conduct the right activity in the right place at the right time. We've established programs that take advantage of opportunities as we address various components of growing our system. You'll notice a couple of those programs are listed on this slide. We look forward to working with the board to ensure that the Parks and Trails services we provide to the public keep pace with the ever-increasing demand for those services. We hope today's discussion has helped reinforce the goal of the Parks and Trails program to successfully achieve Thurston County's mission to create a community that promotes health, commerce, and environmental protection with transparency and accountability. I thank you very much for your attention, and we're all available to answer any questions that you may have.
Great presentation, and I just want to say, great job on the audit, right? I really do appreciate the work that's been done, and I guess I'll say from the Perfect Park, folks, I know several people who attended and do the volunteer events are really appreciative of the Parks Department and everything that they're able to do with very little resources, and I know they're huge advocates for the increases. I know they have big dreams, and we've always let them know that there are constraints in terms of that maintenance and operations. So just very appreciative of everything you're able to do with the little capacity that you have. I'm wondering in terms of some of the challenges and opportunities as we look forward. We've discussed the possibility of another REIT in conversations. We've discussed just different funding opportunities. And I'm wondering in terms of parking fees, is that a possibility? As we're looking, as we're looking to fund the maintenance and operations piece of it, as we're thinking of different solutions to fund that piece, have there been alternate funding mechanisms that you have all thought about, perhaps?
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by parking fees?
Discover Pass type of thing.
Supposedly, like the Nisqually Preserve, supposedly they make hundreds of thousands in parking fees annually, and just people visiting that site or using that site. But I'm curious about, I want to go check out all these undeveloped areas. I think, there's a lack of camping areas kind of in Thurston County, and I know that's really, really popular, and people spend tons of money to go park their camper in any kind of site. I love parks, and I see them as like an economic engine if they're working and people are visiting them, and we need to have reasons for people to come and stay in Thurston County, and to me, parks and space like that are one of them. So I'm curious about camping, curious about parking fees. If we can't afford our parks, then we need to look for ways to be able to pay for them. Community programs, if we've got, lodges and spaces like that, renting that out to somebody that teaches something and just, not having our own people teaching parks and rec stuff, but just, hey, you want to teach a class? Pay us money and you can use it for whatever you want. Volunteer park hosts. I don't know, I like people around Commissioner Edwards' age. They love to just go and park their trailers in campgrounds and take care of them for the summer. And then youth sports facilities seems to be something that's lacking in Thurston County. And, there's the youth athletic fields grants are pretty generous. And I know just
We've got a
number
great
one for
facility
$500,000.
at That was the county's, we gave it to Lacey, the PAC.
The rack?
PAC.
Yeah, and that's insanely popular.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
and then, and you can rent those fields out.
So I think one of the things, and you had talked about, we should be talking about all the great things that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think as you're throwing out those ideas, which I think are fantastic and opportunities to explore. I think one of the reasons why maybe the department keeps talking about staffing levels, and when we talk about our staffing levels, that's all maintenance and operations. We're not talking about planning, the capital side of things, that ongoing coordination and partnering with the communities in terms of what they would want to see for the expansion of Burfoot or, right? So there's all that body of work that we have people doing on other duties as assigned. So Shannon, as our planner, is doing some of that with Xavier, who I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, Xavier Soto is our project and program management manager. So excellent ideas. I think that's what we're still, when we talk about staffing, we're staffed to do maintenance and operations. I don't charge time to Parks and Trails. I don't know that Karen
Charge
maybe
after
very
5
min-
o'clock.
Yeah, so those are all on our, outside of our 40 hours. So I think that that's a part of what we're a little bit challenged with, that there are a lot of amazing, great ideas to do. The who's going to do them and the implementation is,
So what I'm hearing you, and not to say that I don't feel called out with the Burfoot Park expansion, because I, but, what I'm hearing is just that additional 4 full-time and 2 additional seasonal, that's just for the maintenance and operations. So when you're talking about the planning and all of those other pieces, then I guess, what is it that you're asking for?
we're not asking for
Well,
anything
that
right
you
now.
would
We're
need-
just doing a state of.
Well, no, like, but realistically, right, like, for all of these requests that you just heard, and I know that there's different requests that come in from commissioners, especially when we're talking about, like, the future of our parks and trails, like, what is it that planning, like, takes? Is it 2 additional FTEs, or like, what does it, is it going to have to be a study? Like, what is it that you need in order to?
Contract with a consultant to
Like-
develop, grant applications or,
Probably would take a little time for staff.
I want you to ask for things.
If I could weigh in, I think what we can do, and what I'm hearing that commissioners ask is, we have some things we want to accomplish. Public Works and Parks, what do you need? What resources do you need to make that happen? Rob and I would be happy to have a conversation with this team, and by the way, great presentation, to figure out what that looks like. And then what do we get for those resources?
And we're not saying that it's gonna be like,
So-
there's budgetary constraints, but I think
Understand?
the board needs to have a realistic view of like, if you want this is what it's going to take, right? Because I think it's easy for us to request things, and especially when there's community concerns or there's community wants, right? Like, it's easy for us to come and be like, let's do a Burfoot Park expansion, let's do this, or let's do something else, or let's do RV parking, right? But I think we really need to have that realistic view of like, well, in order to accomplish this or to plan out that, we need this.
So we, I don't know, Brandon, if you want to speak about what your work plan is as it pertains to Parks and Trails this year? I did reach out to Brandon, our internal auditor.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't have a whole lot to share on that topic since the project hasn't started, but Parks and Trails audit is on the work plan for 2024. And so that hasn't been planned in scope, but certainly this conversation is incorporated into it, and looking at some of the long-term challenges and doing some benchmarking and looking at what some other jurisdictions have done to address some of these challenges. Because again, I don't think a lot of these things are unique to Thurston County.
Thank you, Brandon. So we're starting that. We've started that conversation with the internal auditor to start doing some of that research.
As we move forward, if we think of imposing, say, a parking, okay, who uses the parks? I think, your maybe lower income, middle income folks use it the most. So then if we start charging them to go to the parks, do we cut them out of the enjoyment of the parks? So it's an equity issue if you think about things like that. So it boils down to the lack of revenue. We can do some more park activity. We don't have the money, and we are not allowed to have that money to do the maintenance and upkeep, and that's why we have 5 people and Lacey has 35 people. And if we don't address that, we really can't accomplish what we need. So that's the reality of a bum situation, and that's, the Growth Management Act was supposed to have part 2. They never did come through with part 2 about funding this, and I believe it was intentional. Can't prove that.
I'm an American, not an Americant.
Yeah.
And I want to focus on what we can do, and I want to see some ambitious, vision for, what we're going to do in the future. And then we figure out how to tackle it.
Well, let's go to the legislature and ask them to help us, help our community.
Yeah, but also there's ways that we could generate revenue. We just need to suss those out.
And again, keeping in mind, some of the jurisdictions surrounding us do have metropolitan park districts, and that is how they are funding
Yes.
much of their parks maintenance, so.
You were talking about the park impact fee audit,
Yes.
and you said that was generated by a citizen complaint?
Yes, a citizen, and I believe that the person had come before the board on more than one occasion, concerned that we were using parks impact fees for maintenance and operations.
Including today, probably.
And so, they had, a place you can put into the state auditor asking for an audit. And so based on that request, it just happened from a time standpoint that they then added that to their audit plan. The state auditors added that to the audit plan. So we worked with the auditors at, in late 2023 to provide them the information. And again, we came through that audit with, no findings at all by the state auditor that we are using our park impact fees as they were intended, which, as Mike, mentioned, it is to fund growth, capacity-related expansion types of projects.
And it was a specific strategy that we presented to the board a handful of years ago, to your point about other ideas for funding. We got out of agreements that we were maintaining, that we did not own the facilities. Almost all of them. We got pulled back in on one of them, but we're now getting money from WDFW for maintaining some of their infrastructure. But one of the other things we looked at was how do we use our park impact fee dollars and add capacity to existing infrastructure that we have. So the restroom replacements that we're increasing access in terms of ADA, but adding capacity to those, and also putting in materials that are, there's no maintenance, but lower maintenance of those materials, and that is more uniform for the different restrooms that we have at the different facilities, right? So it's one toilet that fits into all of them.
I would also say we're very strategic about the grants we pursue, because many times grants have long-term obligations that come with them to maintain or keep open certain facilities, certain trails. And so, given the funding challenges that we're faced with, we are thoughtful about what grants we go forward to pursue to make sure that it doesn't have long-term consequences or requirements for the county.
But I do think that there is a struggle with the having to be very reactionary versus the planning and proactive with where we're going to develop, which is what we use the post plan for, which, is a planning document that we should be updating every 5 years. But you were a part of that discussion at the TRPC for the Transportation Policy Board, where they're talking about a large regional, going after grant funding for a large regional trail project. And so what does that look like? Certainly that's something that needs to come before this board, because they're the legislative authority. But it does seem like
you know, we're trying to shift to be more proactive. But we're also very, very mindful, whatever we build, we have to maintain. That's any one of our systems, that's what we're looking at.
There is the problem.
So when you're saying that you're careful about the grants, are you like specifically saying you don't pursue RCO grants because of the, like the long-term requirements?
We look at what the requirements are of the grants and how that piece of, how the grant would facilitate whatever project that we would be looking at doing, and depending on how that fits into our strategic plan or our long-term plan, we would determine whether it made sense for us or not. I do know that we had a couple properties, you'll be the one to tell us which ones, but that they were originally funded with RCO grants. And when we were looking at cuts a few years ago, because we were trying to figure out how to pay for things, we recognized there were at least one or two that we were unable to do, that we would have been unable to close if the need had been there because of the commitment that we made with that grant funding that we'd received.
On park impact fees, the analysis that you provided kind of speaks in the aggregate, but I think it's more complex than that, right? Because they have to be tied to a certain area.
They do not. Park impact fees do not, unlike
Traffic
transportation.
impact
Yeah,
fees?
transportation impact fees are collected and have to be used in certain
Okay.
regions of the
Two
county.
point nine
This is
million you said is available for funding, that's,
Regionally,
could be used anywhere.
yes.
Well, regionally, what?
Yes, within the county, sorry.
And is that, so it looks like in 2023, you said you brought in 700 and some thousand, you spent about 800. So, you know, is that, I guess my question is, are we on track with the 2.9 million? Is that an average amount to have? Do we have projects lined up to spend? I know we have like 10 years or whatever it is.
We do.
And it's first money in, first money out. So
Correct.
how old do we have any money that's at risk?
No
for-
money at risk. We are currently spending 2020 money that we brought in.
Okay, so that's
So
good.
we're,
right up to
yeah, we're
date.
right up there.
Okay, great.
We have a capital project plan for 2024, about 1.7 million to use that. So, yes, I mean, I think we are really effectively using our dollars. We're contributing park impact fees to the trail connectivity program and
Is
projects
that
that we
Gate
have.
Belmore? Is that where we're going? Because that was gonna be my next
Yes.
question. What's the status of that? We haven't heard about it in a little while.
I'll let them talk to the status of the project.
So that's finishing design, should go to bid later this year, and then potentially at the end of the year could go to construction, more likely the beginning of the next year.
Actual construction?
Correct.
Perfect.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Awesome. Commissioner Edwards?
I guess as we wind down, I think you guys are doing an excellent job with the very limited resources. You have to balance out what can be spent where. And just, you're magicians as well. I mean, you're just doing great.
The one other thing I will comment on, I know Mike said that generally speaking, we do have money to fund capital programs, and that's true. But I think you're all tracking on the fact the real estate so park impact fees cannot be used by themselves, right, to fund projects.
100%, they can't be used.
100%, and so that does require a second funding source. That has been historically real estate excise tax, second quarter funds, which I think you're tracking on the fact that that is looking at a declining balance, which just means there will be less money for capital improvements through that funding mechanism, just for awareness. That doesn't mean we don't look at grants and other things, right, but just kind of tying that
The REIT
together.
2 fund, Mike.
Oh, right. Okay, just since Commissioner McKee had shouted out to the Barefoot volunteers, I just wanted in Fry Cove, when we had it was a Steamboat Lions Club that took the lead on some of the projects, and county staff is out there, so thank you to those guys. On Earth Day, I'm sure they do things other parts of the year as well.
Also, the Park Foundation was involved in.
Park Foundation, right,
together.
exactly, yep. We have one of those folks in the house. Anything else for the parks?
I'm hoping Park Foundation comes up with something pretty good for us.
We're having conversations with them. We've reached out, we've actually provided them our wish list of things that we think would be good priorities for them to focus on, and so we were
I think these
We're
folks are
meeting with
covering
them
all
towards the end.
bases. I really do. I think they're doing an excellent job.
I think it was a great presentation, excellent job, and these are the folks that have the expertise to be able to respond to the board's needs and get you the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is an executive session. I'm going to propose we take a quick break. It's 10:50, maybe come back at 11:05. We have a 45-minute projected executive session to take up.
I just want to meet you. 11:05 there, Commissioner Mejia and Brandon, our next topic.
back. It's 11:06 a.m. and we're picking up with item 3 on the agenda, which is executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I. Litigation that has been specifically threatened to which the agency governing body or member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party. Specific topic is employment liability, Richardson v. Thurston County. Approximately 45 minutes. Is that accurate? You guys?
Sure.
Okay. And commissioners' action may follow, so it's 11:07. We'll be in executive session till 11:52. It's 12:16. We're back from our executive session that was extended. And we don't currently have a quorum, but we did during the executive session, and direction was given to staff regarding a settlement authority for the issue that was addressed in that executive session. We don't have time for any commissioner items, and we no longer have a quorum for the meeting, so with that, we are adjourned.
I have commissioner items, that sucks, that's okay.